Islamic books and its associated sources often call any period before Islam as the period of ignorance. In the Arabic, this is called Jahiliyyah. The concept is crystallized within Islam's main sources, such as in the Hadith shown here. Although the term ignorance is an insult in anyone's language, it is condescending and derogatory. The reality is that this slur could not be further away from the actual truth. In previous videos, evidence was cited of pre-Islamic pagan Arabs acquainted with literary eloquence. They were also familiar with Greek medicine. Also, in and around the vicinity, there were important centers of learning, such as the Alexandria School of Medicine and Gondishapur University, also pronounced as Gondishapur with the letter J. It was so advanced that according to the Cambridge History of Iran, it was the most important medical center of the time. After Islam came on the scene and of its subsequent conquering of Persia, it benefited from it hugely, which eventually propelled the Islamic world's endeavor for learning and science during its early phases. Indeed, Muhammad, his companions, and caliphs benefited from it in one form or another. With that being said, it is likely that many or even the majority of Muslims who laud the early Islamic world's achievements probably have never heard of Gondishapur or even know how it impacted upon Islam. At any rate, despite its historical importance and contribution to the world and Islam in particular, the university was subsequently destroyed soon after Islam's arrival. The Academy of Gondishapur, also known as the University of Gondishapur, was one of the three Sasanian centers of education in the city of Gondishapur in Iran during late antiquity. It was the intellectual center of the Sasanian Empire. It offered education and training in medicine, philosophy, theology, and science. Today, it is recognized as a World Heritage Site, as it was once the oldest university as a center for training scientists from many different countries. The full link to the article is below. In 489, the East Syriac Christian Theological and Scientific Center in Edessa was ordered to be closed by the Byzantine Emperor Zeno. Nestorian Christian scholars who carried out important research in medicine, astronomy and mathematics, together with Greek philosophers, were banished from Athens by Justinian in 529. This created a need for a center of learning. It was under the rule of the Sassanid Emperor Khosrow that first Gondishapur became known for medicine and learning, as he gave refuge to these scholars fleeing persecution by the Byzantine Empire. The emperor commissioned the refugees to translate Greek and Syriac texts into Pahlavi, the literary language of the empire. They translated various works of medicine, astronomy, philosophy, and useful crafts. More information can be found in this reference book from page 396, section 12. In the book called The Role of the Nestorians and Muslims in the History of Medicine, distinguished physician Dr. Alan Whipple, whose brief biography and achievements are listed here, says on page 16, at Gondishapur the teaching was done largely in Syriac translations from Greek texts. This means Aristotle, Hippocrates and Galen's works were readily available when the medical school at Gondishapur was operating during Muhammad's time. In this academic paper called The Influence of Gondishapur Medicine During the Sassanid Dynasty and the Early Islamic Period, found in the Medical National Library of Medicine website, it explains the university's lasting legacy and significance to human civilization as a whole, learning and advancement of science. The medical studies were conducted in an academic setting and practiced in a hospital, with the documentary support of a library which would be provided with the main texts, mainly of Greek, Syriac, and Indian origin. In the study by Dr. Mohammed Azizi, he says that the Gondishapur Medical School was a renowned cosmopolitan institution which had a crucial impact upon the further development of Islamic medicine. Actually, at the school, the Greek, Persian, and Indian medical heritage was conserved, developed, and it was then transferred to the Islamic world and subsequently to the West. In the study titled Medical Education in the First University of the World, the Gondishapur Academy, it says the Academy of Gondishapur was the world's first university, going on to say some of the important features of this scientific center of the ancient world include a policy of tolerance, conducting annual international congresses, compiling the first comprehensive medical textbook, doing the hospital rounds, physician licensure exams, special attention to the ethics, and using an educational curriculum. Finally, going on to say it declined after Islam came on the scene when it was moved to Baghdad. Here is another academic article on the university's influence. In the section Hospital, Medical School and Academic Medicine, taken from the Cambridge History of Medicine in Iran, it mentions how medical students were required to work in the hospital under the supervision of experienced physicians, evidencing the graduates had to pass exams in order to practice as accredited by universities' physicians. It then quotes Oxford-educated medical doctor Cyril Elgood, a distinguished physician, as explained by the Royal College of Surgeons website, a man who played an active role in quarantine facilitation during infectious disease outbreaks in Iran, and best remembered for his breakthrough studies on the history of medical and educational advances of Persia no less, says in a Medical History of Persia, page 173, quote, "To a very large extent, the credit for whole hospital system must be given to Persia." Although Islamic sources, one is shown here, claims the first hospitals were Islamic in origin, academic research such as this one, called The Origins of the Islamic Hospital, Myth and Reality, from the Bulletin of the History of Medicine published by Johns Hopkins University Press on page 367, Princeton University educated and award-winning Professor Dawes says the origin of Islamic hospitals was inspired from Gondishapur Hospital, according to most historians. This is also supported by objective Muslim academics cited in this video. In 832 AD, the seventh Caliph of the Abbasids, Al-Mamun, bolstered the famous House of Wisdom, also known as the Grand Library of Baghdad, which was also a major Abbasid public academy and intellectual center in Baghdad. This new building emulated the methods of Gondishapur. In fact, the House of Wisdom was staffed with graduates of the Academy of Gondishapur. However, there is no mention of this found in this popular Islamic website source. The link is provided below. It only goes on to laud the Islamic achievements without any reference to how Gondishapur may have influenced it. For evidence of how the House of Wisdom was influenced by Gondishapur, this research conducted by distinguished Professor Dr. Uday Dokras from the University of Stockholm, Sweden explains the House of Wisdom was modelled and built on the system of Gondishapur University. In this research paper, Professor Dr. Mehmet Solomez describes it as, quote, one of the most important science centers in history that harmonized within itself classical Greek philosophy, Indian culture, and the Persian scientific heritage. He then says it also had a deep influence on Islamic culture and civilization through its professors, who in the early years of Abbasid rule began to settle in the capital city of Baghdad and eventually established a similar school modelled on their school in Gondishapur. From that point on, these professors made a significant contribution to Muslim medical science and philosophy. Studies such as this mentions how the university was the greatest intellectual center and medical school of its time. It was one of the largest hospitals of the ancient world, which hosted eminent scientists and physicians from around the world to do their research and practice medicine. In 651 AD, during the final years of the Sassanid Empire, the city was conquered by Muslim Arab invasions. This led to the gradual emigration of the physicians to Baghdad and consequently to the demise and finally the closure of the center. Gondishapur is mentioned in some of Islam's earliest classical sources, such as in the biographical dictionary Kitab al-Akhbar al-Ulama bi Akhbar al-Hukama, which translates as History of Learned Men, also known as Tarikh al-Hukama by early Muslim scholar Ali ibn Yusuf al-Qifti. It is one of the most important sources of biographical dictionary from the Islamic world. The book references the university, its advancement in medical knowledge, and the people who worked there. As an example, on pages 81 to 82, he mentions how Gondishapur was renowned for its skilled doctors, going on to write about a famous physician, Buktishu ibn Gurgas, who trained at Gondishapur. He was a Christian physician. Such was his skill that he was a physician to prominent Muslim individuals such as Caliph al-Rashid, who made him chief physician. This is referenced at the end of this paragraph, which starts by talking about him treating al-Rashid's older brother, who on the request of his father al-Mahdi, the third Caliph of the Abbasids, went on to treat the fourth Caliph of the Abbasids, al-Hadi. Gondishapur is mentioned by name several times, here circled in yellow. The pertinent parts have been translated for brevity's sake, although the full text is included here. The book is accessible for anyone wanting to view and translate it for themselves. So in conclusion, Islamic sources describe the period before its arrival as the period of ignorance. However, far from the ignorance slur, the Academy of Gondishapur, also known as the Gondishapur University, was one of the major Sasanian intellectual centers of education and academy of learning in the city of Gondishapur, Iran, during late antiquity. Before and during the early days of Islam, the medical school and hospital of Gondishapur was still a focal point of science, particularly medicine. As seen in a previous video, Muhammad's personal physician was a student of Gondishapur, so too were the Caliph's physicians. The center was an example of tolerance and acceptance of people and knowledge from all over the known world. It offered education and training in medicine, philosophy, theology and science. In addition, it systemized medical treatment and knowledge. The scholars of the academy transformed medical education in ways never seen before. So it was once the most important medical center of the ancient world during the 6th and 7th century until the arrival of Islam. The surrender of the Persian Empire to Muslim Arab forces in 638 AD brought the gradual decline of academic activities there. Later, the House of Wisdom in Baghdad under the Caliphate of Harun al-Rashid was modelled on Gondishapur. In fact, the first generation of the Baghdad school were all graduates and scholars of Gondishapur. All this shows the influence of the university upon Islam and its lasting legacy to humanity, something that is often overlooked, especially within Islamic sources and to modern Muslims, which makes one question who really is befitting of the ignorance slur.